Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Piper Report. I have a short article here. Democrat ex-CIA boss Panetta calls GOP FISA memo irresponsible. Okay, let's see why. Former CIA Director Leon Panetta suggested Sunday that House Republicans were irresponsible in releasing their politically charged FISA memo because they didn't gather enough information to put their charges in context. The Republican leaders of the House Intelligence Committee argued in the memo they released Friday that FBI and DOJ officials, as part of the Russia collusion investigation, requested a surveillance warrant from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court on a Trump campaign advisor that was based, at least in part, on an anti-Trump dossier financed by Democrats. Panetti, a Democrat, told Fox News Sunday that the committee led by Chairman Devin Nunes released the declassified memo without looking at the entire warrant application, without talking to the judges who actually make these decisions. Okay, I kind of agree with this. I agree in the sense that I want to see the whole application. I do. I want to see the memo that Adam Schiff wants to write and release, and I want to see the FISA application that was sent to the courts. Because either way, I've been trying to think about it here for the last few minutes. I don't know what would be in that application that would justify the DOJ using outside contractors to create a false dossier that would institute a FISA warrant against the Trump administration. I don't see anything in the application that would justify Christopher Steele, who was hired from the FBI, who garnered this information from unreliable sources and then leaked that information to the media. And then the FBI used that information that was leaked to the media to substantiate the information in the Steele dossier. So for those who don't know what I just said, basically Christopher Steele wrote a memo, an anti-Trump memo, then he leaked it to Yahoo News and other media organizations. So when the FBI and DOJ officials were going to the FISA court and they were using that dossier, they had to substantiate that dossier or else it would be essentially conjecture and hearsay, and that wouldn't fly in the court. So what they did, they used a Yahoo News article, because if the Yahoo News article was able to report on information that also substantiated part of the Steele dossier, then that means that there were two different sources that reinforce the validity of the dossier. Now, think about that. Let's try to put that in context here. That's like the police arresting somebody based on a hunch, and then to prove that they have the right guy, the prosecutor or a member of the police department went to that person's house and basically put false evidence there. So when the search came after the arrest, they would find evidence that substantiated their arrest. This is called fruit from the poisonous tree. And this means that everything that led subsequently from the dossier must be omitted, must be ignored. And some argue that the whole wiretap on the Trump administration was predicated upon that dossier. So in this regard, if we were to base it off the fruit of the poisonous tree, that investigation was not warranted. But that example I gave is just, it's exactly the same as what's happening here. You create conjecture, and then you try to prove it after the fact. You prove it after the fact by using evidence that you planted. So I'll be interested to see the other information on the application. And either if there is something on that application that justifies the FBI doing this, it still doesn't justify that the FBI and DOJ officials were working with the DNC against the DNC's primary political opponent. Even if there is just cause to investigate the Trump administration, what they did and how they got there, that's where the issue is. That's why there's a problem with the deep state. That is why there's a problem with corrupt FBI and DOJ officials. We know this from Strzok and Page text messages they had, both FBI officials. We know this. We know this from the FISA investigation after Mike Rogers discovered that the NSA was allowing Fusion GPS access to their databases so they could help Christopher Steele draft the memo by using NSA databases resources. I think that's irresponsible, said Panetta, who in his Washington career was also the Pentagon Secretary, a Clinton administration Chief of Staff, and California Congressman. Well, I think that says it right there where his loyalties lie. Panetta has been critical about the release of the memo since before it was released. On Thursday, the day before the memo was made public, Panetta told NBC that President Trump was at risk of creating a constitutional crisis by pushing for its release over the objections of the FBI and DOJ. Yeah. But you know what? This is a completely warranted constitutional crisis because we have people in the FBI and DOJ that are violating the Constitution. I don't care if there's a constitutional crisis if the result of this constitutional crisis is that we can remove corrupted officials, treasonous officials, from our government, from our deep state, from the shadow government where they try to dictate future actions. I'm all for a constitutional crisis to that regard. So yeah, this Panetta guy, it's really interesting. It's really funny before I end this here, is that we've been hearing days before this memo was released that it is a threat to national security. It is a threat to national security. No, it's not. There's nothing in there that indicates what we do as intelligence, what our government officials do, how they gather intelligence. Nothing in there. There's nothing in there that delineates the type of behaviors and type of activities our intelligence services do to gather that intelligence. There isn't. This was a smokescreen by them. This was them trying to protect themselves from what was going to be released because they knew what was in the memo. They knew what was going to be released. So right now they are trying to cover themselves. They were trying to cover themselves then, and they still are trying to cover themselves. And I'm done.